Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by my coworker, my colleague, our lockdown corner here on Texas Football. He is Rod Babers. Going to talk a little Longhorn football today. A little post-spring wrap-up, and we're never done talking Longhorn football here on the channel, obviously, but we got some lingering questions that we're going to search on this edition of On Texas Football. This edition is brought to you by Bluebird Organizing. We'll tell you a little bit more about Perry and Bluebird Organizing later in the show. But, Rod, one of our live streams this week, you, CJ, and I got into, now, did we find out any answers to spring ball? And that led me to think, okay, we went over some answers, but what are some lingering questions? Because Sark said this week at the Touchdown Club of Houston luncheon, that press conference that Jerry and I attended, said he didn't really have any concerns about the team. And I don't know that I've got outright concerns, Rod, but there's some lingering questions. So let's start on offense, Rod. There's a lot of position groups where all of us here on the channel have gone through it. There's going to be maybe some growing pains at some spots, but the upside at pretty much every position group is sky high. What's your one lingering question offensively for the Longhorns as they go into the summer?
Yeah, I mean, I would give Sark and the staff a lot of credit, right? Because a lot of things that were questions for me going into the spring are now more curiosities than anything. I'm just kind of curious about it. But the biggest question I think is really for me, and I don't know if you'll get a lot of the answers to it, is about the gelling of the offensive line and how that will translate to the running game and how, because I think pass protection wise, actually, I think they're going to hold up pretty well. A lot of it is because of Arch's sack avoidance. He'll be able to avoid more sacks than Quinn. The running game, though, I do wonder if you'll have a different identity in the run game. We know Texas heavy outside zone running team, but now with healthier, we're not going to healthier core running backs and just different skill sets overall on the offensive line. I just wonder if some of that will change. So I don't know if I'll get, that's like I said, more of a curiosity than anything, but I had questions about tight end. I had questions about depth at wide receiver. And, you know, I had questions about depth at running back. And I feel like Sark and the staff via the transfer portal brought in a lot of possibilities. And now I'm just more curious how it's going to look. Like tight end, that was my number one question going into the spring. It's like, what the hell are they going to do at tight end? Like, they really have nothing at tight end. I mean, and then Malik Agbo left. He was the only guy that had a reception at the tight end position. And then now they bring in Jack Injuries, one of the best tight ends in the country. So now it's like I said, now I'm just curious. Now I'm like, well, who's going to be the second tight end? Who's the number two in that 12 personnel, which Sark throws out there, I don't know, 30, 35, percent of the time, right? Who's going to be that set? Does he want a guy that can block? Because Juan Davis earned that job because he was a blocker. That's how he won that job. We thought might have an advantage. Nope. Sark's like, no, I need somebody that can actually, seal in the run game, and somebody that can actually be a force in the run game in terms of their blocking prowess. So is that Spencer Shannon? Is that Jordan Washington? So that was my number one question coming in was, kind of tight end, because Sark says the second most important position in his offense behind quarterback. Well, quarterback, there are no questions at all. But I was wondering, man, if all you got at tight end are uncertainties, which is what he had this spring, makes sense for him to go out and get Jack Injury. So I think now my biggest question is, like I said, now more of a curiosity as to how it's going to look. I do think Jack Injuries translates really well to the Sark, very compatible with the Sark offense.
Proven commodity, Rod. He's done it at the Power 4 level, at the Power Conference level. So I don't worry about your number one tight end now. Now you can bring Jordan Washington along. The learning curve still going to have to be accelerated for him, but you don't have to just force him into a primetime role if he's not ready for it. You can kind of let him get his feet wet, let him get acclimated. Nick Townsend's going to need to get acclimated. So having a guy that's proven commodity at that position, that answered, I think, probably everybody's main question on offense, because we know how important the tight end is for Sark. Circle a trusted wide receiver. It's not a lingering question for me, but I still want to see how that comes together when DeAndre Moore gets back and when Emmett Mosley gets in. But the offensive line, and for me, it all boils down to those three guys in the middle: Cole Hudson, DJ Campbell, and Neto Amazullo. Those three guys. If those three guys click and it works, I think that's going to go a long way towards making you a better short yardage offense. Yeah. It's going to go a long way toward making you a better red zone goal line offense. And it's going to allow you to run the ball when you need to, when you have to, when the opponent expects you to run the ball. Can you run the football effectively to take the air out of it and put a game away? Texas really couldn't do that last year in some of the bigger games it played. So cohesion on the offensive line, I'm with you, Rob, but I'll dig deeper and I'll say it's down to those three guys on the interior.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I almost wonder if they are the strength that everybody hopes and projects they will be, if Texas will start running a lot more power gap schemes, period, not just in situations where, it's expected goal line, short yardage, but if that will become a strength for them, because they know they have some backs now that actually may be a little bit more compatible with that style too. And last year they actually did run more gap schemes than they've run in the last couple of years. Now, still heavy zone team, mostly a zone team, zone blocking scheme, but still they increased the amount of gap power concepts. I wonder if that continues to increase just a little bit more with, if Jared Gibson earns Sark's trust a little bit, if you increase that too. But yeah, the circle of trust, I thought, Parker Livingstone would, be someone that could be in that circle of trust, right? We know more and right wing are there. But see, now I believe he's firmly there. I just heard too many good things about Parker Livingstone. Now I'm just wondering how expanded is the circle of trust this specific season, right? Because Sark is an 11 personnel guy. That's one back, one tight end. He's got three receivers on the field 50 to 55% of the time. So those three are your top three. But I do wonder, when you start rotating guys, moving guys in and out, who ends up cracking that circle of trust? Who ends up being the fourth guy? Sark has kept it pretty tight. Last year was the most expanded circle of trust that we've had since he's been here. But they were a really deep group of wide receivers. That was a deep room last season.
I think now it just depends on which of those three freshmen comes along the fastest out of Khalil Lockett, Jamie French, and Dalen McCutcheon. Coming out of spring, it might be Dalen McCutcheon, even though Khalil Lockett and Jamie French were higher rated guys. And I don't think that's a surprise, Rod, because we talked about it a lot from a feel for the position perspective. Dalen McCutcheon was probably going to be the most ready to go of those freshmen. So I don't think it's a surprise to hear that we heard his name probably the most of those three. But over the summer, we could get through the summer, get to camp, and maybe the light comes on for Khalil Lockett and Jamie French and all three of those guys. And like I said, maybe instead of 5 or 6, maybe it's those top 4 with Livingstone, Wingo, Moore, and Emmett Mosley, and the 3 freshmen. Maybe you are 7 deep at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting. I think that's best case scenario, right? Is that, and that's another question too, that actually is not just a curiosity, really, fabulous freshman class, right? Which one of these guys actually ends up earning playing time early? I think late. A lot of these guys will end up earning playing time. I'm talking about early on in the season, which means they have already kind of earned the trust of the coaches in the spring, in the offseason, and in training camp. That's always like we were all amazed to see a guy like Kelvin Banks come in and immediately, start as a true freshman. And man, he must have earned the trust of the coaches with like a week or two, right? Like, how do you do that? So it'll be interesting to see. Like Dalen McCutcheon, I've heard his name a lot, and Sark's offense for wide receivers is pretty advanced. You got to learn all the different positions. In addition to that, there are a lot of nuances. Even Sark said Matthew Golden. That's why he didn't pick up steam till late in the season. He said, no, it's actually because he got more comfortable in the offense. He finally learned the nuances of the offense, and then he was playing at a faster speed. That can be tough for some younger guys. But Ryan Wingo, he's a prodigy. Last year, he started out fast, right? Because he had already done that. So that's another question, actually a legitimate question, even more so than the curiosity of these younger guys that we're hearing about. Which one of them stand out early on? I know CJ is really excited about Nick Townsend coming to campus. He thinks, oh no, Nick Townsend actually a guy that can, really make an impression, as soon as he hits the field. I'll be interested to see which one of these freshmen actually ends up early on ascending and separating from the pack.
I still want to see how much of the offense can Michael Terry digest.
Yeah, that's good.
What kind of a weapon can he be? He was at wide receiver all spring, really kind of a learning experience for him, getting to know the wide receiver position. But again, he's one. If that rate of development that you talk about, Rod, if that accelerates for him over the summer, we could be getting through camp and be talking about a completely different Michael Terry than the one we view right now.
Yeah, that is good. That's a good. Where will Michael Terry be? Don't you have you said basically what game you think is Oklahoma game? You think
I think the Florida game, by the Florida game. Yeah,
okay,
that SEC opener. Yeah.
Yeah. Be interesting to see like where he is. Right? Is he even in the rotation at wide receiver? Because that's what we talked about. He's got to crack that, in my opinion, for the coaches to start diversifying his development.
Yeah.
And weaponizing him other ways. We got to see him crack that wide receiver circle of trust a little bit, or at least get in that rotation early. If I see that, then I might have some faith that this season we could see, his multiplicity realized. I don't even know if we see it this year because, like I said, wide receiver is usually a pretty complex position for young guys in Sark's offense. And the fact that we're asking him to learn both, not only shine at wide receiver a little bit and flash there, but then we're going to put him somewhere else to let him learn that position again and then flash there. Might be asking, it might be asking, but I like that. And here's another question I have since we're on the offensive side. I know we're going to talk defense too. The running backs early on, while Cedric Baxter, because maybe Cedric Baxter will be ready to go game one to carry the workload. I'm not sure he will be. I just don't know. And I don't know if you want to rush it. Like, I don't know if they rush it or not. Which one of these other young backs, right? Is it Jerry Gibson? Is it a Christian Clark? Like, who else? We know Trey Wisner is the guy. We know Cedric Baxter will be. When those two guys are healthy, that's your backfield. But until then, you need a contingency plan just in case Cedric Baxter's taking a little bit, or in case, knock on wood, there's Trey Wisner gets nicked up early on in the season or something like that, which happened last year. A lot of guys got nicked up. Hey, running backs, all of them kept getting nicked up. Yeah. I do wonder which one of these young backs, what's going to be the hierarchy or at least the depth chart for the young back.
We heard a lot of good things about James Simon, and running back is one of those positions where if a freshman has it, it usually doesn't take him long to get on the field. So that's the guy I'm looking at, right? And to your point earlier, your running back group might be built a little bit different. Like with Jaden Blue, it was more conducive to running more outside zone. The version of Trey Wisner we saw last year was more conducive to running a lot of outside zone. You might be a more between the tackles offense. Trey Wisner putting on a little more armor. We get more Jared Gibson in the lineup, and then James Simon, it could be more kind of a between the tackles thumping type run game as opposed to having some slashers that maybe could break the big run.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's what I really want to see is, first of all, how many of these backs are they willing to utilize? Because I'm big about the pony package and putting out, different personnel groupings. How many of them they're willing to use, and how diversified do we get with the running game now with different backs? Do we get more inside zone? Do we get more pin and pull stuff? Are we gonna get more power gap concepts? That's really one of my main still questions actually that I do have, more so than a curiosity. Because Sark said we're gonna get back to running the football. He said that at the Touchdown Club. He said we got to get back to running the football because everything in Sark's office is kind of built on that, and I think that's going to be an emphasis for him. But how is he going to do it? You can't just do it running outside zone because everybody's ready for that. If you ain't ready for outside zone facing Texas, you ain't done your homework. You're coaching this thing.
Can't be predictable. Got to be diversified a little bit, and we'll see what the running game looks like. Well, you mentioned defense, Rod. We'll get there here in just a sec, but right now I have to tell you about our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. It's Perry and Bluebird Organizing. Is your wife feeling overwhelmed? Does she constantly mention how she wishes she could find items more easily, or she wants to park her car in the garage but there's no space, or maybe she's complaining about tripping all over the kids' toys? Are you, as her husband, feeling at a complete loss as to how you can help with spring cleaning well on its way and Mother's Day just around the corner? Give your wife the gift of a lifetime with a customized organizing session from Bluebird Organizing. Perry, she's the owner of Bluebird Organizing. She'll come into your space without judgment and give your wife the organized kitchen, closet, playroom, or garage of her dreams. Plus, whenever she's done, whenever you guys are done, she'll take all those donations for you, leaving you and your family ready to enjoy the new space. It's time you give your wife a gift she'll love for years to come. Call or text 737-346-7779 to book your free in-person consultation today. Again, that's 737-346-7779 for Perry and Bluebird Organizing. Again, thanks to Perry and Bluebird Organizing for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football.
Just real quick, shout out to Perry and Bluebird Organizing. They coming to the house, got my appointment set up for later on in May to organize this office, this space. Y'all can message me. Y'all just see what I got manicured for you, and help me organize the garage outside because man, with one kid, it's amazing how much stuff that just piles up.
Yeah.
We off one side of our garage, so I'm gonna get it back, and Bluebird Organizing will help me do it. So
I'm probably setting that appointment up right after you, Rod, because you're preaching the choir on that one. You just accumulate stuff. You got so much stuff. Speaking of stuff, got some new toys on defense this spring, specifically at corner, Rod, and that's where I want to go. Corner and interior defensive line are probably the two areas where we looked at going into spring and saying, okay, I think the post-spring activity will tell us a lot about what the staff thinks of those two positions. Obviously, they wanted more experience on the interior defensive line, so they could get Levon Johnson and Marad Watson in addition to the guys they already got. But at corner, they didn't go portaling for a corner, and we heard whether it was Kobe Black or Cade Phillips or Grayson Littleton, Santana Wilson, Warren Roberson might have had the best spring of anybody in the secondary. We heard a lot of different guys at corner, Rod. So what lingering questions do you have on defense?
Yeah, that is good. I mean, obviously corner, I'm a little biased here, so I'm paying a lot of attention to it. And it was my biggest question going into spring. And honestly, I didn't get an answer, but I did get a lot of possibilities. And I'm actually fine with that because I think one of them is going to work out. It's very likely one. Hell, we didn't even bring up Gilbo, right? They got Gilbo working out there. You got the young phenom and prodigy Cade Phillips, who I really like. They also talk about Ron Roberson finally starting to flash. He's starting to show that, hey, maybe he wants to take that job, and maybe he finally the lights kind of going off for him in the secondary. And you talked about some of the young guys. Santana Wilson's another name that's come up a lot. Kobe Black, of course, another name. So because you got 5-6 options, now you got to figure it out before Ohio State game number 1. Yeah. Because you got like 5 or 6 options, I feel good about it. Now it is more of a curiosity for me. And Sargent they've been so good at having a sense of urgency in the transfer portal that when there is a potential hole in the roster, they usually address it in some form or fashion in the transfer portal. And because Sark has kind of earned our trust, we assume that if they didn't, then the young guys must look good.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's what we kind of look at cornerbacks. Like, everybody's optimistic about corner. Like, well, they definitely went out and got a corner with the way, kind of with the attitude and how aggressive they've been in the transfer portal this offseason. They definitely would have went out and got a corner if they looked at them young bucks and was like, man, they getting toasted. All right. So we got to go, because there was a couple of corners that actually, even late in the portal, ended up committing. A couple of guys, actually some, from in Texas too. But anyway, I digress. So I've heard a lot of good things about a lot of different guys, and the fact that they have not had a sense of urgency about corner leads me to believe, based on the trust that they, I think, earned with us, that they're going to be all right there. I don't know how it's going to look. I don't know how it's going to. And right now, I think they believe that, listen, Gilbo will play it. If worst case scenario, we'll let Gilbo play it, and then we'll use our safeties because we're so diverse there to fill in the gaps of the secondary. Because I think they believe they got 3 to 4 starting safeties. I mean, they got Jelani McDonald, Taft Daddy, Derek Williams, and there's probably another young buck in there they probably like a lot too.
I'm glad you went in depth on corner, Rod, because that's my lingering question. Corner has a lot to do with it. What's going to be the schematic or philosophical change or alteration that we see from PK? Because we know last year, you brought in Johnny Nansen at the perfect time, because losing to Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, PK's even admitted that they felt they needed to play more single high safety to get an extra body in the box if needed. And it ended up working out. Now, were you as good of a run defense in 24 as you were in 23? Statistically, it was really close, but considering the competition you played, you might have been better against the run for the course of a whole season. Yeah. Going through the SEC, as good of a run defense as you were. And I feel like the schematic adjustment, the philosophical shift, is going to be playing more man coverage because of the pass rush you got. But you just laid it out there. I mean, it's going to really come down to which of these guys at the end of the day. And, with Dwayne Akina coming back, we expected Texas would play more man coverage. But which of these guys are going to best fit into that philosophy? Hey, it may be that Jalen Gilbo doesn't fit into that philosophy, or maybe he does. I don't know. But I think being versatile enough and playing enough man, Rod, to where you can have your lineup can be maximized based on the opponent, and you never feel like you're at a disadvantage. I think that's the step this defense is taking. I mean, I think we're done talking about, is this Texas defense going to be, we know they're going to be good. Are they going to be elite enough to where, hey, if we want to play a team that wants to line up with 22 personnel and run the football, we can play that game in a phone booth. Yep. If they want to run 10 personnel and try to spread you all over the field, you can play that game too.
Yep. I think ultimately you're right. That's where I think they want to be multiple enough to adjust to any offensive scheme or system. But interesting you talk about the corners though, because the way you phrased it just made me think of it. I think the younger guys are more adept. I think they're more suited to play man coverage. I think Texas is recruiting a different kind of athlete than they inherited when they first got here. So I think the Kobe Blacks or the Cade Phillips, these guys look different now. They're longer. They look, they look like man coverage corners you'd put up there to play bump and run. Now I'm sure they can play zone as well. But the film I've been watching on the young bucks coming in at the corner spot, they seem to be coverage specialists. All right, they're coverage specialists, and they're just longer and rangier guys. So I think that your Cade Phillips, your Kobe Black, those guys actually may benefit if they start playing a lot more man coverage. Last year they were probably between 15 and 20% man coverage. If they're going to bump that by 25 and 30% and be man coverage a third of the time or somewhere like a quarter to a third of the time, I think it favors the young guys. Jalen Gilbo. And let's see who else is going to be playing that corner. Whoever's the guys they kind of inherit. Jalen Gilbert, one of them guys. I think he's better suited to play what they're playing now, which is a lot of match zone coverage, match quarters, match thirds. And you want to do both. But I do think Gilbert may be at a disadvantage if they're in man coverage reps. It's crazy. I probably would take one of the younger bucks in straight up man coverage. But match coverage is a lot about eye discipline. It's a lot about diagnosing route concepts. They take a lot of mental reps to get that and to be able to process it quickly. That's why that veteran secondary last year, they were the best in the country. They had seen it so much, but they were terrible at it when they first started doing it in 2022. So I just think ultimately, that young bucks may struggle with the match zone concepts early, which may be why it keeps them off the field until later, as you brought up.
Just a little nugget to file away for the rest of the summer. We've talked about it. The young DBs probably won't see much playing time against Ohio State because it's the best receiving corps in the country. Yeah. Probably facing the best offensive player in the country, Jeremiah Smith. Yeah. Probably not going to play a ton of man coverage. No. But what kind of butt am I talking about here, Rod?
Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams size, Cardi B size, Megan Thee Stallion size butt.
Mm-hmm. If one of those young guys is out there against Ohio State, then I think you've got a potentially special player on your hands because that means they're not playing a lot of man. They are playing more zone or match coverage or whatever. Yeah. So that tells you not only does this guy have the physical ability to do it, he's got it upstairs. And, with Coach Akina, he's not going to hesitate to put a young guy out there if he's ready.
That's a great point, Jeff. I never thought about that, but that's what we should be looking for. We see a young buck out there in that secondary that early on against Ohio State. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have no fear about that guy being able to hold up against the best in the country. Yeah, I didn't think about that. You're right.
It's a heck of a test right out of the gate is facing, the best wide receiver in America, Jeremiah Smith. So.
And honestly, this thing about it, if I'm a Jalen Gilbo, I want to play corner when Jeremiah Smith is there.
Yeah.
They're going to move him around a little bit. They moved him around a little bit more. For the most part, he's out there outside. Most of the time he's out wide. They probably will try to hide him a little bit more because now, every game, every opposing defense will be trying to shut him down. But if I'm Gilbo, man, for the NFL scouts, you need to be matched up against that dude. And you need as many reps against him as possible because if you shine against him, oh, man, you're going to be on the Thorpe list and we'll be on, the mock drafts and everything. So that is going to be interesting because maybe that's why Gilbo early on may be out there. Yeah. Early on, instead of in the nickel unless they find a corner, like you said, they trust one of them young bucks.
And then Rod, real quick, I think the only lingering question on special teams because we went into spring with a kicking competition between Bert Auburn and Will Stone, saying, "Hey, which one of these guys is going to win the kicking job?" And Sark answered that before the end of spring, saying, "Neither one of you won. I'm going to the portal to get a kicker." So you got that figured out. Who's going to return punts and kickoffs? Because we've heard about Warren Roberson working there. Ryan Niblett's gotten some action. DeAndre Moore has worked there in the past. But if there's one thing Texas might want to go get from the portal, if they can find it, if they find a guy who's an experienced returner, that might be the one last piece they go get.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that DeAndre Moore is going to be your kickoff returner, right? But I'm with you. I don't see another kind of surefire, no brainer. This is the return guy. And I know they've talked about a lot of different guys getting reps. I don't think they love any of them as game changers. And I'm not even sure DeAndre Moore is really a game changer in the return game. I think he's adequate and good. But like Matthew Golden was considered a guy as a game changer. Silas Bowden was one of those guys. They've had Xavier Worthy was one of those guys. They've had those guys back there. And so I'm with you. If they could find one of those, I think it would be a huge asset. I'll say something that's interesting. I know they won't want to do it because he's going to be like your number one weapon in the passing game. But man, Ryan Wingo ain't bad. We go watch him in high school returning punts, and he's got some wiggle to him, man. He's twistier than you think. That's why Sark likes him on those end and rounds. He's really good with the ball in his hands. Now, you want to risk that? Probably not. But they put their starting receivers out there before doing stuff like that.
You think throughout the years at Texas, I know there was a time where one of your former teammates, Mac Brown, was hesitant to put Roy Williams on returns, which that's something I was clamoring to see the whole time Roy was at Texas. But Mac flipped the script by the end of the decade, hit Jordan Shipley on returns.
Exactly. My number one
on returns. Yeah. So, like you said, Sark put his number one receiver, put X-Men out there on punt returns. So,
X-Men had never returned punts in high school either.
Exactly. So with that in mind, we talk about the circle of trust. No better way to get in the circle of trust maybe than if Sark trusts you enough to return punts. He probably trusts you enough to be in the receiver rotation. So a Khalil Lockett, a Jamie French, a Dalen McCutcheon, maybe one of those guys gets a shot in the return game. We'll see. But Rod, thank you so much for the time and the knowledge and the expertise. Always, thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for making it happen. Make sure you stay locked into the channel and stay locked into ontexasfootball.com. If you're not a member, get over to the site right now, sign up, use the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access on ontexasfootball.com for $49.95. Again, that's the promo code OTFOG. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on this video. We're over 80K. There will be something involving Jerry Hamilton and a tub of mayonnaise when we get to 100K. So maybe if we get to 90 fast, Rod, maybe we can make something happen before that. But now keep it coming. Thank you so much for your ongoing support of what we're doing here at On Texas Football. We love bringing you the information, and we're glad you continue.
Yes, sir.
For Matthew, for Rod, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I am Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, welcome.